Hi, you guys, and welcome back to the podcast.
We are the Carwells.
I'm Emily.
And I'm Sarah, and we are, as you know, Airbnb interior designers and investors. All right, podcast listeners, welcome back to our show. Thanks for joining us. Today we have another repeat guest from our very first podcast guest that we had on the show, Jeremy Werden. Welcome back. For our listeners, I'm sure a lot of you know who Jeremy is. If you don't, check him out on social media. We have been longtime friends in the Airbnb space, but it's been a minute since we've had some time to catch up with him. So that's what we're going to do today, talk all things Airbnb. But as always, we start each episode with a podcast horror story, and Jeremy's today has like a little horror era to it, I suppose. So Jeremy, I'll let you tell your story.
Yeah, so a couple of weeks ago, we're in the midst of hurricane season, and we bought 2 Florida properties this past winter. And definitely, when you buy in Florida, it's kind of at the back of your mind, hurricane, hurricane, hurricane. However, in the last 10, 15 years, there really hasn't been a bad one, or at least, one to the extent of what there was a couple weeks ago. So we had our first hurricane, and it was the first summer. We got the property, and our property is in southeast Florida versus southwest Florida, which, thoughts and prayers with, everyone in Fort Myers and Sanibel and those areas that were really devastated. But we definitely wanted to prepare on our end, and, make sure that we had our houses hurricane proof. I didn't even really know what that meant. I mean, shutters were like a word to me, and I physically know what they look like. But as for actually getting them on the house, that was something that we haven't done, and turned out we didn't have the right equipment to actually put our shutters up. Um, it was raining a lot, so we had to continually drain our pool, had to sandbag some of the doors, so water couldn't get in. There was tornadoes 10 minutes away from the property that were flipping cars and stuff. So really, it was just kind of stressful preparing. And actually, we had guests during the hurricane. I don't know if that's a best practice to do that, but we all of a sudden there's a deluge of people, are reaching out who are coming from Southwest Florida looking for evacuations, and honestly, kind of on like a, we didn't do any predatory pricing or anything. We kept the price, which was very low, because this time of year is Florida's lowest pricing, and we sheltered people who's were from Fort Myers or from Tampa area. And yeah, so I mean, we had to prepare a lot on our end to make sure the houses were okay, and they were. We didn't have any issues. It was kind of definitely very sad when the guests left. They called me just to like thank me for providing shelter, how like helpful and important it was for them, given they were going through a lot. And when I'm saying, hey, like is everything okay with your property? And they said, yeah, we don't even know if it's there anymore. When they were leaving, they said, yeah, we haven't been able to talk to our neighbors, so we actually don't know if we're gonna return and our house is gonna be there. To which obviously that's devastating. But the guest said, yeah, this happened in Florida, Hurricane Andrew 15 years ago, and he works for he's works for his church, or is a volunteer, and he said it was terrible. Everybody, it was a terrible experience. However, it brought everybody closer to the church, and everybody came together. And that's the only thing he can think of that's gonna get him through this experience, is how he knows, like, everybody can come together and find God at a time like that. So that was really moving to hear that. Obviously very sad too, just the notion to me, because really I'm thinking about like, all right, let's protect our houses. I'm calling the guests like, hey, we have to sandbag the doors. Like, I don't even really know what that means, but like, don't open the door because it's sandbagged. So I'm thinking about our houses, and then he's telling me, yeah, he doesn't even know if his house is there anymore. It's just like crazy. But yeah, the house, the storm went back into the ocean, regained strength, then hit North Carolina, which is where we have a bulk of our properties. And the storm got wider. So it literally, our properties, we cover like 5 different markets in North Carolina that are hundreds of miles apart from one another. And the storm literally hit every property some way or another. I mean, it wasn't the 100+ mile per hour winds or flooding, but these are very heavily treed areas, and 40 mile per hour winds knocks power out everywhere. I mean, we had a tree fall down in one of our driveways. We had a tree blocking a neighborhood, like guests getting in and out of a neighborhood. Power was out at almost every property for 2, 3 days. So really, yeah, I was just trying to, just kind of like that week was just communicating with every guest, making sure they had what they needed to literally survive. I mean, they didn't have power, they didn't have water. So trying to like, I flew back to North Carolina. I happened to be going to a wedding, but I literally like I went by the houses, dropped off water. It just happened to be that I was there, like because I was going to weddings. But really, just tried to do everything we could to make everyone's stays, as I don't want to say pleasant, but literally help like survival mode. So that we helped people that week, and everyone, all of our properties were occupied. So like it was a profitable week, even with everything going on. But yeah, definitely one of the more hands-on stressful weeks that I've ever experienced.
Yeah. Did you have to refund anyone? Like, did you have anyone that was like, the weather is crap, the power is out, I've seen you try and help, but this is like not the vacation that I paid for. Can I have my money back? Or was everybody pretty understanding?
Yeah, so there was one group that actually had power. So we have at this lake, we own 3 houses and we manage 3 other houses. One of the houses we managed, they actually still had power. They didn't lose power. Like pretty much 95% of the lake lost power, but somehow they didn't. However, the internet tower lost power, and they were just complaining off the wazoo that they couldn't stream things. And I'm just like, I just had to send like a very abrupt message to them, like, look, like every single one of our properties right now doesn't have power. Like we had guests in Florida who literally were staying with us because their houses like got, were hit really hard. Like we're trying to help everyone as best we can, but you have to understand the internet tower literally doesn't have power right now. Like there's nothing we can do about that. Like there's no power. You have power, which is amazing. Like I'm super happy you have power. But you just have to be understanding of the situation we're at. And yeah, they didn't respond to that. So and then one guest who had the tree down in the neighborhood and they couldn't come or leave. They asked for a refund and gave them a day refund.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I mean, it's just chaos, and you never know as a host when that chaos is gonna break out, right? Especially for you, having it hit every single property. I mean, you're getting hit from literally every angle.
Yeah, it didn't hit our Colorado properties. Granted, I actually don't manage our Colorado properties, or I'm involved there, but didn't hit those at least. So almost everyone.
I'm so sorry. But hey, it's one of those things where I'm sure, like, going forward, when you hear about a hurricane coming, of course, it's going to spark up some anxiety, but you're like, okay, we've been here, we've done this, we know the routine. So you're wiser now walking out of it.
Yeah, next time, I mean, we'll have shutters that can actually go on the walls. I mean, I'm like, why can't they go? What, like, you can't just like glue them up there? Like, what's the issue? It's like, no, you have to have like physical things to screw them into, and you don't. And I'm like, ooh, all right, how much does that cost?
Yeah.
All right, we got them.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Good.
Yeah. And now, anybody, because people want to get into the Florida market all the time, keep that in mind that there is hurricanes that come through and you need to be prepped for it because everybody's like,
And
oh, Florida market's so profitable.
the insurance in Florida is different than any other insurance market I have dealt with. So it's not even just the hurricanes that are like the issue in Florida. It's really the insurance, which obviously the two are like related, but just something to keep in mind in Florida, like is the insurance situation.
Is it what, over double what you pay in North Carolina?
It's not even just the pricing; they just don't have options, or like you have to use one insurer for one thing and then another insurer for another thing. And then, I mean, obviously, flood insurance is like a national program. So you get that through the federal government. And a lot of properties on the coast of Florida, you need flood insurance legally. And, but like wind coverage, you have to get through one person. And then short term rental coverage, you have to get through another provider. And each provider wants you to jump through hoops. Like, it's not just like, oh, we got you. It's like, you got to do these 75 things for us to give you insurance. And then actually our wind provider, right after the hurricane, said we have to rewrite your policy and we're no longer covering liability, like wind related liability, which I don't even know what that is, but
Isn't
they
that
they
the
just
whole
dropped.
thing that what insurance is for?
Yeah,
Like, isn't
but
that the entire purpose behind insurance and they're not going to cover it anymore?
well, the issue in Florida is just no insurer wants to be there. It's not only are there storms, such as bad hurricanes. Florida's the most litigious, and I always not really sure how to say that word, litigious. I don't know. People sue
Close
other
enough, right?
people all the time. Like I read a stat that's like 75% of like home insurance like lawsuits are in the state of Florida in the country. Like 7% of the home insurance policies are in Florida, and then it's 70% of the lawsuits. So insurers just don't want to be there.
It's because
Yeah,
all the people that retired and went to Florida are pissed and they want a casual life and they're just suing each other because they're mad.
they've got the time. That's what it is.
Yeah, and also, I mean, there's not really down. Like I've been reading on this now that I'm like pretty invested in the state of Florida, and I'm like, why is this the way it is? And it's also like you can sue, and if you just are fraudulently suing somebody, there isn't really like a downside to it. On a lot of places, like you sue someone wrongly, you can like get in trouble, but not in Florida. I don't know. I think there's like a huge industry that's lawyers who just like if you go in Florida, you drive around, you see billboards everywhere that's like call this lawyer for some lawsuit reason. And I think there's just a huge industry that's like lawyers making money off people suing, insurance, suing other people. And the state government gets a lot of money from that industry. I don't know. We don't need to dive too deep into that, but Florida, not even hurricanes, but it's like the insurance is just wacko. I must admit.
It's the wild, wild west out there.
Oh
People
my
be
god.
all over the place.
Well, yeah,
Goodness.
apparently if you have questions about Florida, ask Jeremy. He knows.
I don't even want to talk about Florida anymore. I mean, right now it's the slow season, so I'll talk about Florida in February when our properties are just absolutely caking. But right
Yeah.
now, there this is less slow season and hurricane season, so I don't want to hear the word Florida.
It's
Fair
on your
enough.
list currently. I don't blame you. I would feel the same way. So, since the last time that we interviewed you, I mean, your portfolio is growing all the time, right? Will you update us on where your portfolio stands right now? What markets are you in? How many properties are you managing? How many properties do you own? That sort of stuff.
Yeah, so I do a combination of buying Airbnbs. I started by managing and arbitraging, so I have the management arbitrage as well as I have a single glamping unit. So at this point, we own 7 properties, arbitrage, 4 listings, manage 4 listings. And when I say manage, that's for other owners. So I co-host or manage properties for an external owner on 4, and then have the one glamping unit. So we're up to 16, I guess 16 listings, in which it's a mix of all the different Airbnb strategies.
Wow, and you're managing all 16 of those. Or no?
Yeah, and actually, so my brother has 2 in Colorado that I'm like very minutely involved with. So I don't even count those, and yeah, I don't manage those, and mostly it's just because like me and my brother, we just don't want to get in arguments about stuff, so we just like let that one go to a third party. Like just it's not worth us getting angry at each other.
Fair
Um,
enough. And
but
I think I saw you. So last time we talked, you had 2 boat rentals, and I think I saw a video where now you are up to 7 boat
oh
rentals.
yeah. So I had 2 boat rental operations,
Okay.
um, of which last year we ended the summer with 7 boats. This year we consolidated to one lake. We still have the 7 boats. So yeah, I still have the boat rental business. So yeah, sorry if I guess you asked Airbnb, but yeah, still got the 7 boats going
You've got a
on.
lot on your plate.
We just were under contract on a multifamily here on the lake that this lake house is on, and
Awesome.
the multifamily comes with 2 pontoons, and I'm like excited and also anxious about it because I know operationally it's gonna be like a whole added layer of yeah.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, and we're under contract on another lake house. So sorry.
Yes,
Done.
we love to see it. Your most expensive one yet, right?
Yeah, no, we're definitely leveling up. It's scary, and no, I see all the. I'm obviously in tune with everything you got going on, and it's definitely cool stuff. And I know you're leveling up to the orange house, which that thing looks super sick. So I'm excited for you in that.
Yeah, thank you. I know it's been a lot of fun, like kind of running side by side and watching each other's businesses grow because we're in such a similar era at the same time. So we're rooting for you as well. All right, Emily, do you want the next question?
Yeah. So all of your purchase properties are with partners, correct?
Yeah, I do not own a single property. The only listing or thing I own that's like completely mine is the Airstream camper.
Okay.
Everything else I own with partners.
Yeah, with those partners, so where do you find your partners and like what type of partners do you look for? And then second part to the question is do you think you'll shift away from partnerships going forward?
Yeah. So my consideration with partnerships, from the early onset was who do I think I can do more deals with? Like, I didn't really want passive investors. I at least wanted them to like help in some sense, whether it be help with, you know, leading another deal, somewhere else, or whether it be they came and physically helped set it up with me. So that was the considerations, was like long-term growth potentials, because like a lot of people have been hitting me up over time and definitely want passive investment. And I did have early on, one of the early properties had a couple just like completely passive investors, and ended up buying them out just because, just kind of like incentive disalignment. So yeah, that was really the consideration. Is and each one of the partners I've done, early on, like one of our first houses had 6 partners, bought 2 of them out, and the other 4 I've done, every other deal with has been, those 4.
That's amazing. I think that, there's a lot of curiosity around partnerships and we're kind of walking into it. So we've done the reverse where we invested ourselves solo and now are getting into that partnership game. And I mean, we had a lot of questions walking into it and now we get asked a lot of questions as we're kind of involved in it. And so I think that one thing that's super interesting to me is like, I've talked to you about partnerships in the past. I've had several conversations and it's interesting that no partnership really in real estate is structured similarly, and
Mm-hmm.
it really comes down to understanding what you're trying to get out of that partnership, and that's really your driver and like what type of partner you're looking for, how you structure it, what type of house you buy with those people. And so there's like a lot of ambiguity around it that I think a lot of people struggle with because, especially at the beginning, I mean, it had to be super advantageous for you to have partners around you. And like you said, you're like, I needed help, right? Like, not only did I need help capital wise, but I needed help team wise. Like, I needed more hands to put this property together. And so, like, at the beginning, when people are getting involved in Airbnb, I think it's one of those things that they look at it and they're like, how do people do that? How do people like get a group together that's all on board with this thing? And so for you, from what I understand, the partners that you ended up choosing were people that were friends of yours, right? Like you just reached out to people that you already knew within your warm circle and was like, you pitched the idea and everybody was like, yes, let's do it.
Yeah, or I started posting social media probably in 2020, COVID summer, about both boats, and then about the properties that I was managing, and just taking pictures from the properties, or I don't know, just random posts and stuff. And I had people reaching out at that time. My following was predominantly my friends, from before I was an Airbnb social media person. And yeah, they were. I mean, a good bit of different people were reaching out, like, "Hey, I see what you're doing. I have money. Like, can we partner on a property?" So I was getting hit up by a lot of people, and I still get hit up, by so many people to invest in different things I'm doing. But yeah, early on the consideration, I had a couple buddies who just reached out. We had a couple calls, and I could just they were down to like uproot, and one in particular, Blake, who I partnered with on a bunch of properties. He was just very evident he was willing to do whatever it took. Like, he wanted to learn, and that was what was most important to them. Was like they just wanted to be a part of it, help out, and learn. It wasn't even like, oh, we need exactly Y% return. It was really just, we know this will be beneficial if we dive into this with you and learn from you.
Yeah. So for you now that you've gone through so many partnerships, do you think you'll keep pursuing partnerships long term and that's kind of your scaling plan, or do you plan to like okay, now the partnerships are bringing me enough capital to like invest in my own. And now I'm going to be more particular and just like do it solo.
Yeah, so early on, I was definitely very much capital constrained. I had been investing a considerable amount of my money into pontoon boats from the onset, so did not have the means of going out and buying entire properties myself. I mean, also, this is March 2020. I was 23 years old. I just really didn't have a lot of money. So definitely at the beginning, not only did I need help from like a physical resource standpoint, like honestly, I had never flipped a home. I didn't know when like people like it's kind of funny. We bought, we the first couple houses were like completely turnkey, other than adding like a fire pit and an outdoor shower, and then maybe like a bathroom renovation that we hired someone to do. But like I didn't even know how to paint the walls. Like it was like I didn't even know what do you like where do you go get paint? Like I had no clue even that. So like the first project that was like a pretty intensive renovation, like everybody was looking at me, when we got the place and like what are we doing? I'm just like shit, like I'm gonna pardon me, I'm gonna pick a project. I'm gonna try to figure out how to do this outside walkway. Like y'all figure something out yourselves. Like I don't know how to paint cabinets. Like I've never done that. Um, so that being said, early on just needed help financially and with other people. I mean, as you guys know, each one of these deals is like to really get a home run. It's a lot of work, and like I can only personally do I mean, in the last year and a half, really was bouncing property, renovating, furnishing, getting up on Airbnb. Like each one of those times was very intensive, especially for the ones that we really transformed, such as the one you guys helped with, that first Florida property. Like that was a huge transformation, and it's just like if these projects are so hard, you want to own more and more of them because you can only do so many. Like it's hard to like do 50 Airbnbs at the same time. Like back in the day, I kind of had a dream and idea like, all right, I'll raise a fund from a lot of people, raise a lot of money, and I'll go out and I'll do 50 Airbnbs. That's really, really, really hard. Extremely logistically hard. Doing one Airbnb and making sure it's like a killer property, taking a month and a half, 2 months, that's definitely doable. But when you spend a month and a half, 2 months on something, do you want to own 5% of it, 2%, or do you want to own, 50 to 100%? At this point, if I'm going to do a project, there's a property I really like, I'd rather own 50 to 100% of it. Maybe
Yeah.
if I do a partnership, I want one other partner, or maybe like a minority partner who's just going to go there. I can go to Europe for the month and they're going to go set it up and I won't be there for that. And I'll pay them to set it up or we'll give them equity, whatever it may be. That's kind of what I look for, think about now. Also, I mean, I couldn't get a loan if I wanted to, 2 years ago when I was 23. I mean, I did reach out to banks. They told me they didn't tell me to F off, but effectively that's what they said. They laughed at me. I mean, they said, like, you haven't even, I mean, I got a credit card at like, I wasn't someone who, their parents got them a credit card at age 2 and they had 25 years of credit history by the time they turned 10. Like, I got a credit card at the end of college when I realized, like, oh crap, credit is like an important thing. Like I need a credit card. I got the one when I was like 21, 22 was the first time I got a credit card. So when I went to the bank at 22, 23, they're just like, yeah, you have no credit history. Like you don't even have 2 years of credit history. Um, so
Same.
yeah, I didn't have the option. So I needed other people. I needed other people's resources, both financially, individually, uh, and also I needed their financing. So that was something I did. I like not like other people's money is like a common phrase in real estate, OPM. But I needed OPF. I needed other people's financing. Other people who had jobs for 2 years, and had great credit history, and a bank would give them a loan that and we could work things out where obviously I'm bringing things to the table, they're bringing that to the table, and have partnerships that way.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think that that's, your idea now of wanting to own 50% or 100% of it. You're at that point, right? Like partnerships did serve a really specific role for you and they will in the future, but it definitely changes. I think that like when we're looking at who we're targeting for partnerships now, it's interesting because you're watching the cycle of people's real estate investing with the people that we happen to be investing with. They're other short-term rental hosts who have like
Mhm.
already built their portfolio. And like you said, bringing these properties to life is like no small chore. It is 2 months of like intense work to do a big remodel and make sure all your T's are crossed, all your I's are dotted, and that you're really like maximizing what you can pull out of this property. And so, you see people like the people that we target or the people that are partnering with us where they've done 7 to 10 properties themselves and they're like, no, we're not doing it anymore. Like, we see the value, but nah, like, we want to own a significant amount, but we are totally fine handing over more capital so we don't have to be in the weeds with you guys. And so yeah, I mean, I think it sounds like you're kind of reaching that point where you're like, look, I know what value I bring. I know what I want to own. I want, more of one than less of one, but at the end of the day, like what's feasible, right? Is it feasible to do 50 properties for other people or is it feasible to do 6 of my own that are making me the same amount? I would say 6.
Exactly. Yeah, and I'm starting to get into, because again, this was, a couple of years ago. I was like, wow, this is so cool. It'd be, again, so great, raise so much money. Maybe there'd be additional benefits, like one of the investors can stay at the property when nobody's there. Like this can create this really cool big ecosystem. Uh, and around these different funds, we can have geographic funds, mountain funds, beach house funds, different state funds. Like that was kind of the dream I had a couple years ago. But yeah, that dream has went away. And what I like now, I mean, kind of starting to get into is, really in the last year or two, like helping other people. Airbnbs are really, I would say, for most people's goals, which a lot of people seem to have the goal of financial freedom, being able to travel, that relatively passive income. I want to emphasize the word relatively passive income. Airbnb is probably the best and easiest way to get that. And I can help people do that. I know what it takes personally. I know how to do it, whether it be arbitrage, co-hosting, buying. I've done it uh, several times over at this point. So I'm starting to help other people, and instead of like the do it for you model, which is what I kind of like started with and thought of, now it's like the do it with you, do it with you model is kind of what I'm going to.
Yeah. You can't be everywhere.
Yeah. It's funny that you mention like credit history and stuff because I feel like now like Airbnb and social media and all these things are like careers that people are wanting to get into, right? So like in preparation, people can actually start building that credit so that when they are 21, 22, want to start buying a home, they have already built that credit history. My parents were really adamant about like build your credit history young. So I
Mhm.
think like I was in high school maybe and my mom was like, "We're going to see like once you turn 18 or whatever, I had to be like a certain age. She was like, we're getting you a Victoria's Secret credit card because I would always buy like my birthday presents and stuff there. And so she was like, we're just going to start building your credit from that. And then once you're responsible with that, you get a credit card that you only put your groceries and gas on. But then I had like built up enough credit by the time I needed to buy a car because I needed a car. I had enough credit built up. But like, unless you plan for that, like people are always like, I don't want to get into credit card debt, so I'm not going to get a credit card. But then you don't have any credit history, and then you can't really do much. So I feel like people should start planning that process if they want to get into this as a career, which people do see this as a career now.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree with that credit situation because I was in the exact I mean, I'm still in the exact same position you're talking about where you like didn't get credit for a really long time. Like I didn't have a credit card until the end of college and then I didn't take out a student loan or I paid off my student loans in full, so I didn't have those on my credit as like open lines of credit and I didn't buy a car. Like I my parents bought me a car for when I was in high school and so all of a sudden, now I'm 28 years old and I have no great credit. Just haven't needed it. And all of a sudden I'm like, I really shot myself in the foot for the last 10 years. Like, had no idea that this was going to be so relevant. And so, yeah, if you're young and listening to this, go open yourself up a credit card.
And be
Be
responsible with
responsible
it.
with
Like pay
that.
off your balance every single month. Don't let it build interest. If you're responsible with it, like only buy what you would normally buy in cash anyways. But
Yeah.
if you're responsible with it, you can I have fantastic credit and so does my husband, and that's why we were able to like get some of the things that we've gotten because we planned ahead with credit.
Yeah, and I would say, I mean, even if you just look at the equation of what your credit score is, length of credit history is like, I don't know, 10% or something.
Hmm.
Mhm.
So even if you just get a credit card and don't do anything with it, just that, you'll have a longer credit history by getting a credit card earlier. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, if you don't even spend a cent on it, just purely get it for just to help, that mathematical equation.
Yeah,
Yeah,
100%.
absolutely. Just get one of those ones that doesn't have a yearly fee because you'll think that you'll be like, "Oh, I'm putting anything on it," so you don't pay attention to it, and then you're like, "Oh, shit. I I have this 1 month where I missed a payment because I had the yearly fee."
Yeah. Okay, so back to your portfolio. As you're kind of scaling, are you entering any new markets aside from North Carolina, Florida, and Colorado?
Yeah, so um I mean, I'm always looking. So yeah, I'm always looking at the Florida market we're already in. I mean, as you know, it is significant logistically so much easier to have more properties in less places, and that's something I've definitely learned because I mean, we cover a lot of different markets and we have a lot of different teams, which it's doable. We built out our infrastructure to this point, so it's pretty solid no matter where we are. However, logistically it's definitely easier to do more and less. So I'm continually looking at the Florida market we're already in. There are other markets in Florida that I like, but again, like you know, the second house we transformed was so much easier than the first house because I had all the connections with the contractors, same cleaning team. It was just probably half the time we needed to spend at the second house based purely because I could just already had people I could just call and get over to do the work with us. So yeah, I'm continually look at every market we're currently in. I'm literally probably checking the MLS and talking to realtors weekly. I've started arbitraging in a couple markets, and like when I do arbitrage, yeah, obviously I want cash flow, like that's hugely important to me. But also, it's like I like doing them in places where, for me, like the eventual goal is to own the asset, to own real estate. Like arbitrage, co-hosting is truly a means to an end. It's truly just a means of creating cash. There's no other benefit to them other than cash in your pocket. So if I'm going to do arbitrage and start a new arbitrage operation somewhere, I want to do it in a place where I'm considering buying because then we're creating the infrastructure in that market, getting the cleaning team, getting the handyman, going there to check on things, and also gives you a lot of data. So if you're looking to buy a similar property, you have at your fingertips the best data source you possibly could. So yes, I am looking. I actually got sent a new market last night by one of my realtors who I trust, and he was just like, dude, look at this market. Like a $400,000 or a house you can buy for 400,000 can pull in 100K. And this morning I looked at it and I was like, oh damn, like I'm not seeing 100, but I'm seeing like 85, which is still 80, 85, like which is still pretty solid. But yeah, I'm open to new markets. So short answer, mostly trying to double down in markets we're already in, but also through arbitrage and also just talking to different people, exploring new markets.
Yes, one of these days we'll get you up here in the mitten with us.
Hey, I looked at Michigan. I mean, I know what lake you're on. Like I saw that. I've seen that. I saw that motel. Well, the two motels that are right next to each other. Like I knew what you were talking about when you brought those up. I knew the ones. So
Yeah, yeah, you and a couple other people when I mentioned like I've mentioned, subtly around that we've got that property under contract and I've had a couple of people in the Airbnb space be like, "Yeah, I've been eyeing that one for a minute."
yeah.
Oh, okay, I see you. And same thing on the orange property. It's like when I first saw the orange property, I comped it and I comped it at a 3.3 because that's what it was listed as prior to touring it, and it just comped horribly, right? Like
Mhm.
it was dog shit. And so then when I toured it, well, I posted it on Instagram and I was like, someone please buy this property because it just comps terribly, but I like want someone to own it. And so didn't think anything of it. And then like a week later I toured it and we were like, oh, we're definitely moving forward on this property. Well, these owners hadn't had a single person offer on this property in over 100 days because it's such a specific property.
Mhm.
Like, needs such a specific buyer, and it's so perfect for Airbnb. But then, like, like a week after we got our offer accepted on it, they had somebody offer cash more than what we offered as a backup. And had we not had it already under contract, I'm like, did someone on Instagram
Yeah.
see this and like go for it? Yeah, I was like, I wonder if I'm like my own competition right now.
No, I have to be a little like at first I was just very like I don't care, I'll say whatever, like doesn't really matter to me. Like I don't really think much is gonna come from it. But now I've seen like everything I talk about. I mean, even boat rentals, like I was the first boat rental business on the lake. Next thing I knew there was four. And like I've talked to all of them. They all watch my TikToks. They're like, "Oh, you show up on my TikToks. Like, you're always on my feed." And like, I look at their websites, and they're like the same website that I have. And they might even probably hear this too.
Right.
I even had an instance where like a buddy of mine built a website for one of the other people, and I asked him, I was like, "Did he tell you to like use a website as reference?" And he was like, "Oh yeah, he sent me this one." I'm like, "Okay, that's us."
They're just
uh,
saying copy paste. Just
yeah,
nothing.
exactly, exactly. And then like the number of Airbnbs and like both of the markets that the Florida North Carolina one, like I mean, have definitely went up. And then people somehow call, like they somehow get my number, and I can tell that like I'm like, first of all, how'd you get my number? And then they somehow they definitely my social media like made them look at somewhere, which is honestly kind of stupid and misguided in some senses, because like the initial lake where we bought, like the numbers stopped making sense. Like they stopped making sense at all. Like they literally they went from being good to prices went up so much and supply went up, they were really bad. That's when I went to
Yep.
Florida. That's when we shifted markets. And then Florida, same thing, prices went up. So we went to the, Blue Ridge Smokies. And then same thing. I mean, prices have been going up. So it's like, I mean, I can't say the Blue Ridge was me because that's such a big market that, I mean, Smoky Mountains is so big, not one person is going to, really bid it up that much. But some of these others, the markets are smaller that I'm in are smaller. So I do think I had a material effect.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting to think about because you don't really know, right? It's hard for us to like truly pinpoint the negative repercussions that us being super vocal on social media has. But it definitely impacts. Like you're 1000% right. It's like same thing on in the lake house up in Bitely. It was like when I first comped it and I was looking at the two competitors that were on the lake, like didn't have professional photos, didn't have
Yeah.
professional design, weren't offering extra amenities, and they were the only two properties. And now I'll get on, and all of them are making like 20K more than they were last year, according to AirDNA. And they all have professional photos, all updated their interior. There's more properties that came in, and I'm like, huh, interesting. you
I mean, they
know?
just looked at your calendar. I mean, they said, "Wow, this property is charging this amount, and is
Yeah,
seems to be this booked." Like, I mean, that's what I do. I mean,
right.
that's what I'm assuming others do as well.
Right.
Yeah.
And you make a good point too on how eventually it turns into not a great market that you wouldn't reinvest in. It's like we had that conversation about Gatlinburg specifically with Michael Elefante's properties that were just raking it in. I mean, he bought in 2019 and it really like his voice got really loud at the end of 2020 towards 2021. And so people were seeing the numbers that he was bringing in and then they were investing in Gatlinburg and then they were being like, we're not seeing these numbers. And it's, things just change. Like all of a sudden the market is more expensive, there's more saturation, all these things happen. And so at the end of the day, you're right, it's like it is a misguided decision if you're just listening to one influencer say that they're making great money there, because you have to be able to assess a deal.
Yeah, honestly, I'd say Michael probably, which Michael's from my hometown and went to my high school, and
No way.
yeah, yeah, and we happen to both. I mean, like it's just funny. Like we both bought two properties in Florida at the same time, like, and we bought pretty like very close areas. And it's just funny because like we're looking, it's like we're looking at the data and we're thinking about it the same way. So it's just like funny how we just like, oh wow, you saw what I was seeing, and okay, like I guess we're somewhat similar, have some parallels here. But yeah,
Yeah.
he was like, yeah, you probably single handedly like raised Gatlinburg pricing like 15%. Like not like throwing no like honestly, I if I were to like put a guess at it, like you literally single handedly probably uh, appreciated that market.
Yeah, yeah, that's super wild to think about. Also very wild that you guys went to the same high school. I had no idea.
Yeah, I think he was
Small
like five
world.
years before me or something like that. But his brother I knew his brother. Like his brother was a couple years older than me.
Nice. Very nice. Well, speaking of being able to analyze a deal correctly, cue switching to talk about your STR calculator that you've been pushing online.
Mhm.
It's always fun to watch too, like when Bryce started talking about it on his channel and he was like, this is like single-handedly the best or like most useful thing that you can use in analyzing a deal. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's so fun to watch, like, people be parallel in the market and help each other out. But that has been super useful. And for you, I mean, is that something that you're spending more time focusing on now as opposed to growing the portfolio, or do they run kind of side by side?
Yeah, yeah, and talking about Bryce. First of all, I love Bryce. He's also someone who I like you. I watch all of his stuff, and I don't watch that many. Like I don't really watch that much social media. Like just in honesty, like there's probably like three account, like your account, Bryce's account, and Two Turn Tony. Like might be the only people who are like I pretty much watch all their
I
videos.
love Two
He's
Turn
from our
Tony.
yeah, he's from our neck of the woods.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I actually I met him. I watched his shit before, but he was at like a event in Brooklyn, and I met him there, which was kind of cool. Not from like a
Oh
fanboy standpoint, just but like I don't know, like he's funny in
yeah,
person and
Yeah.
he's
online.
he's hilarious,
Hmm.
hilarious.
Yeah,
We
I actually got arrested that day, so we don't need to talk about that.
That's so on brand, and why am I not surprised at all?
Yeah, we don't need to get into that, but yeah, I was in cuffs and behind bars in Brooklyn that day.
Oh,
Kate
Thanks,
just
geez.
yells.
Tony.
Kate just yells, "Hanging out with Two Turn Tony." Oh,
The thing
harassing. She said harassing Two Turn Tony.
The thing with him too, I mean, we kind of digress here. We're getting off of Airbnb, but
Yeah,
while we're
totally
talking,
are.
the thing with Two Turn Tony is like one day I was like, this guy's outrageous, right? Like he's branding himself with ducks. Like, who comes up with the idea and how do we get people on board with it? And so I decided one day I was like, okay, I'm gonna deep dive. Like, how long has this guy been doing this duck
He's
situation?
authentic.
I went back to his
Forever.
Instagram and he's literally been posting pictures with ducks since like 2015.
Hmm.
Like,
Yeah. People
just
think
I
he's
was
playing a character. Well, he is to a certain extent now, but like the duck thing is so accurate.
I
He
just
really
can't
is a duck
imagine.
guy.
I can't imagine being in high school or college and like pitching the idea, being like, "I'm gonna be the duck guy. Like, I'm gonna be
Yeah,
duck daddy."
he's cool too. I
That's
mean,
so
I met
fun.
him. Like, he was cool. Wasn't like I mean, I wasn't like, oh, dude, I TikTok. Like, we just had a normal conversation.
Yeah.
He's a cool dude. Like, that's authentic as well. He's not, one of those like stuck up LA social media people. No shade at LA. I have family from LA, but I've been to LA, and that's kind of the feel I get from people. He's a not that way, but
Yeah,
Bryce, like him, like Bryce is fucking hilarious. Like I just find his shit super funny.
yeah,
And he's a great storyteller. But I mean, I've talked to Bryce, and he wanted to be an actor, and I find him so interesting. So yeah, he texted me and he was like, "Yo, honestly, I love your like I use your calculator and love it." Like he was like, "I just want to let you know, like I actually use it," and that's so I'm glad that he's legit. Like he really does like it, and I
he's
like
talking.
it too. And as someone who literally is running numbers on hundreds of Airbnb properties a week, who has somewhat of a tech background, I mean, I'm just like, why am I copy pasting from AirDNA, copy pasting mortgage information? Like I know AirDNA is online, or tax information is online. Mortgage information is online. Like all this data is online. Why am I literally copy pasting it to a spreadsheet? That just seems so inefficient. Can we make something better? And I was talking to, and at the time I was also selling my spreadsheet, which I did have, I still do. I have a very good spreadsheet. Like my little brother's an investment banker. A lot of my friends in New York are investment bankers. So we did create a really, I think like a very, very good spreadsheet calculator. But I was talking to one of my buddies who I studied with in school, studied computer science with, and we were just like, yeah, let's take this spreadsheet and let's digitize it. And we think, I mean, A, it'll be something we use. B, it can be something that other people use. And yeah, it's being used the crap out of. People are using, like, it's like the people who use it, they use it. Like, A, I use it. Like, I checked a couple of weeks ago and I was the biggest user. But B, like the people who, I don't know, the 40% of people who are like using it, like they're running a crap load of analyses with it and like running it for a ton of different properties, sharing it. So it's been really cool to see people actually, using the tool. And for me, like that was just good. Like, wow, I can, create a helpful tool. All right, maybe I try to, create other ways to help people, A, analyze deals, but B, also just, use leverage, Airbnb, leverage short term rentals to accomplish their goals.
Yeah. So one question I have about the tool is you're pulling data from AirDNA. Are you also pulling data from like Rabu, STR Insights, things like that to kind of cross compare?
So we've built a comps feature that uses Mashvisor. So essentially, we look what data is available online and like how much do we have to pay for it. We do have to pay AirDNA. Like you can't, they don't have like a public API where you can just pull their information. So like the cost for us for doing this is considerable. Like as much as people think, we should give away a free tool that took us months to build and cost us tens of thousands of dollars to build, like, and cost us thousands of dollars each month. Especially as more people use it, it costs us more and more. So just for, the people who think that you should just give away everything for free and lose money on everything.
Mhm.
This tool took a lot to build and still takes a lot, and we're continually trying to make it better. So we built out a Mashvisor comp set. It's not perfect, but so essentially, if you look up a property, it gives you the AirDNA revenue estimate, and then it pulls close by properties, and then kind of the Mashvisor estimates for them. It's not perfect yet. The data has needs to be cleaned and ran through different APIs to have it like show up correctly. But we're continually working to make it better. We're doing a defaults. A lot of feedback we've got is that people want to save their own defaults because right now we just have like average US home default values for expenses. People want to save their own default values. I personally want to save my own. Like I want to save a default value for like 4 bedroom homes, 2 bedroom homes, 1 bedroom homes, like commercial mortgage versus secondary home loan versus primary. I just want to have different defaults. So that's what we're working on now is the default feature, but also yeah the comp feature, and we're open minded to customer feedback. We continually want to improve it and make it better.
Yeah, 100%. And really what you're giving people, I mean, one, totally on the same boat with you on like people who want it for free, they just don't understand what goes into it, right? Um seems outrageous. Like if if AirDNA was free, no, it's just not a thing. But
Yeah, AirDNA is $7,000 a year if you pay for a full year up front. Otherwise, 10. But I still recommend getting AirDNA. AirDNA is great for markets. We're really a tool for like property analysis. Like
yeah,
you want to run the numbers on a specific property is really where we kind of fall in line. Like we're akin to like an Excel spreadsheet, like a better version than an Excel. We're not AirDNA. We leverage AirDNA.
right. Right. And what you're doing is you're saving people time. Right? Like at the
Absolutely.
end of the day, anyone who has gone through the process of hunting down an Airbnb deal, you know how many Excel files you create to find a property that you think is the best option for you to invest in. And so, not having to copy paste for us who have done it, copy paste, we know how much time we spend doing it. So at the end of the day, it's like it's just like any other business. It's convenience, right? It's convenience,
Hmm.
saving time, making it more streamlined, and the market definitely needed it. It's
Yeah, and it's just
painstaking.
like it's on my phone. Like I can be lying in bed. Like Excel on your phone is like practically don't do it. Like you might like it is the worst user experience to be like scrolling around to find a box to like double click it to create an equation. Like you just can't do it. This I literally like I'm on a run and I see a property I like. I'm like, oh, quick! I literally quickly within 15 seconds can get like a pretty good analysis of how well it will perform and what the profit could be.
Yeah. How I have one more question about this before we shift gears again, but
Mm-hmm.
how like for example, for us in Michigan with AirDNA or with data in general, it's it's different analyzing it than any other market that we've analyzed just because there's so little data.
Yeah.
There's like
Mm-hmm.
no one that's competing like there is in Nashville or Scottsdale or Gatlinburg or wherever else. And so for us, it's like, it really just requires us to get into the nitty gritty and like look at individual comps as opposed to like a general pull from an AirDNA. Um, is there anything that kind of caters to that within this app, or is it really just taking the raw data and you have to know your market and understand what those numbers are telling you?
Yeah, I mean, going into, and this is something, I mean, people I think are like, is air DNA accurate? You know, like how are they for how accurate is your tool? Well, we leverage AirDNA's revenue estimate or AirDNA's rentalizer tool. So the real question is, how accurate is AirDNA's rentalizer tool? Well, first of all, you need to think about, where does AirDNA get this number from? How do they calculate, what the average daily rate and occupancy percentage is going to be? What they do is they draw a radius around your property or the address you put in, and they look at the calendars of these competitor comparison properties. If there aren't a lot of comparison properties, then the data is not going to be that good. If the way they determine what a comparable property is they look at the bedrooms, bathrooms, and sleep count. They don't look at, does one have a pool whereas the other one doesn't have a pool. They don't look at, does one have incredible mountain views whereas the other one looks at a wall. They don't look at what's lakefront versus what's not on the lake. They purely are looking at bedrooms, bathrooms, and sleep counts. So what you need to do is you need to literally go on Airbnb and find the comps that they're pulling from. I mean, you could pay for AirDNA, and AirDNA will show you the comps they're pulling from, or you could just go to Airbnb and just literally look around where you're buying, find other properties with similar bedrooms, bathrooms, sleep counts. If the other properties are freaking Taj Mahals, with like, the highest end finishings and best photos and best amenities, whereas your property looks like a favela, then it's probably not gonna, it's an apples to orange comparison. You're not gonna do as well. Whereas if you, like you said, you see the other properties, they don't have photos, professional photos, they don't have amenities. It takes, you look at the response time of the host. It's like the host responds within 1 week to messages. Then it's like, all right, we could probably outperform our competitors. This revenue estimate is probably low. We can actually outperform them. So initially, I would say, like, when you're buying, in many ways, it can be an advantage to not having data points, because that's what keeps the professional investors out. Most of the times, professional investors aren't going to make an investment unless they have sound data to back up their investment. However, the pitfall to that is they're only investing places where there's a lot of other listings already. We bought one mountain house where there was no data. There was none. Like, I couldn't see, that there were houses maybe on the other side of the mountains that I could kind of compare us to, but really, you shouldn't. It was a 25-minute drive. There could have been something in that town specific to the town we were in. But I just saw the property. I thought it had potential. It was an A-frame. It was unique. It had beautiful mountain views. It had a clear space to add a fire pit, add a hot tub. It had a basement we could turn into a game room and bunk area. It just had every, like the structure of it. I know this is something you look at, like the qualitative factors, not the quantitative. That is a huge part of being an investor, is the qualitative component. Uh, it's not something that's like an exact science. It's just something you got to go there and use your eyes and look around and be like, oh, this, like, it smells like poop here. Like, it literally smells like poop. Like, there's cows right next to here that are pooping. Like, it smells bad. Or like you walk around the neighborhood and you're like, holy crap, this is sketchy. Like, I would not tell a family to like go on walks here. In Florida, that's, for instance, like, a lot of areas in Florida, have became gentrified and are really nice. Whereas there's certain streets that just don't have that same safety feeling. So yeah, we bought one without any comps, no comps, really just confidence that if we turned it into a cool experience, it would work out. AirDNA put it at like 60,000 or maybe like 57. I think my revision for 2023, because it hasn't been a full year, but I would say 2023, I expect it to pull in probably between 85 and 100,000 for something that we bought for 419 or 429.
Yeah. Yeah, you make such a good point. I mean, and it's difficult. I mean, it is one of those things where, like, if you're paying attention online to all these big places where people are making money, there's like two hands to it. It's like, as a new investor, you like, cash flow is important and you want to get into something that costs you the least amount of money that you can pull the most out of. But also, a lot of people want that safety factor of like, okay, I know this is going to work. And those
Mm-hmm.
two things don't really go, right? It's like you kind of get to choose one or the other. Um, But yeah, at the end of the day, I think, overall, when you look at the tool that you've made or AirDNA or any of the tools that you use to analyze a property, you're never going to be able to 100% take that human component out of it when looking at a property and being able to like fully assess why you think it's a good deal, because not all of them are qualitative, right? Or
Yeah, or you just
quantitative.
have to have like even for arbitrage. One of the first arbitrage unit I went in was had no comps. Like there was none. I was just like, this property's close to downtown. I actually worked with the landlord who was a home flipper and said like, can we fence in this backyard? Because to me, I was just like, I see all these properties downtown. They don't have yards. People, they're traveling with their dogs. There aren't doesn't seem to be a lot of properties in this area where like that are dog friendly, that have a private space to just let them off a leash. Like that is my conviction. Like that little that simple, qualitative assumption, I really think is what's going to allow this property to outperform. And it's been spot on in that particular market, in that particular area. Even though there was no comp to say, oh wow, this property here has a backyard and is the same size and is just the same distance from downtown and it's doing this. There was nothing to say that. But I mean, that house, arbitrage unit's been cash flowing me like $4,000 a month, which is pretty nuts. So
Yeah, that is nuts, but good for you. But yeah, it really does come down to that. And I think what you're really good at and what we try to be really good at as well is understanding that user experience. Like when you talk about having a fence around the backyard or some of the things that we decide to add to these properties that are like not a small fee, right? You've got to be able to
yeah.
swallow a couple $1,000
Mm-hmm.
to adjust a property in a way that'll be like really putting the guest first is I think what you do a good job of, what we try to do a good job of, is making sure that we're paying attention to like putting ourselves in our guests' shoes and being like, okay, if I was paying X amount here, what would make it worth it? What would improve that experience? And if you can kind of hit it on every single corner, then all of a sudden you're in the 95th percentile.
Exactly. It's not an exact science. Like that's just the truth of the matter. And that, in my opinion, that's what allows like the reason why like Airbnb is, in my opinion, kind of like the great equalizer to 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 real estate, is because like a big institution cannot, big institutions want to buy thousands and thousands of homes. Buying one and turning it into like an incredible experience where every little detail is thought through is not something that they're able to do. They don't have the bandwidth. They don't, the suits can't walk around the apartment or walk around the house and like think about, oh, like someone's gonna walk in and they're gonna smell like a little lavender. They just don't. They can't. They don't. It's not the way of thinking. So that's why. Yeah, that's like one of the things that's unique to Airbnb investing, is what allows the little person to win. Which even us, like we're experienced at this point. We're like relatively big Airbnb investors. Like we're still little people, like in the grand scheme of things. Like we're not making a dent on the overall housing market as much as people in our comment section say we are.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, especially when we're buying properties that have been listed for 100 days or
Yeah,
more.
exactly. Yeah, that a family doesn't want to. There aren't full time residents who want to live there, anyways.
Right, right. So true. Yeah, I mean, we get that comment all the time. And, like, especially up here in Michigan with the properties that we're typically buying, aside from the orange property, they're lake houses that are literally surrounded by 100% of second homes.
Yeah,
People's second, So we're like, I don't think that really applies here. But
Second homes, old houses that actually need to be fixed up, and nobody wants to do the work to fix them up and all of that. And then
yeah,
people get mad that we're buying them. And I'm like, who else is buying this house?
yeah.
No.
But it's also nobody complains. Like, and I don't want to digress and talk about our comment section and everything, but I'm dumbfounded. Like, you guys know how you used to be able to get a second home loan as the same interest rate as like a first home. The government literally subsidized second home loans, like to the point where they were, you only have to put 10% down. You don't have to put 20% down like you most often have to do for an investment loan. And uh, the rate, Franny and Freddie, were essentially backing the rates. So, keeping rates low by making like the bonds not, I mean, you can get into the minutia, but I look around Florida and literally I'm like, here's someone who lives in New York who says they're living in Florida, bought a house to say they're living in Florida. They're not actually here. This is another house, someone from Massachusetts who's saying they're living in Florida, but they don't actually live here. They're just saying that for tax reasons. And that's every house is people buying second homes, government subsidized second homes, and they don't actually live there. And is that not, that is that, so they actually changed it. So now second homes are more akin to investment loans. And I'm like, nobody's talking about this. Like that actually is going to have a huge effect on things. People are going to be less inclined to buy these second, you can get 10 second homes and not live there.
Yeah.
Right.
At least with Airbnb, people are using the homes. Most of these second homes, like the average second home in the US is used, I believe less than 4 weeks a year. Is
Yeah,
the,
less than that.
Crazy. I
Yeah.
had never actually heard about people doing that, like buying a home in Florida, saying they're living there. And I don't want all of the Barstool people to come at me, but Dave Portnoy is actually literally doing that right now, where
he's like acting like, I've seen his, like he's like,
he
oh, I'm in
has
Florida right now. Oh, so terrible.
yeah,
It's
he
like,
has a house in Miami, I think, or
yeah,
somewhere in Florida, and he has to leave New York because he has to be in Florida for a specific amount of time for tax
6 months.
purposes. And he did this whole thing. He was like, "I'm being punished because I'm rich and I worked hard." And I was like, "Yeah, dude, it does kind of suck, but you're Dave Portnoy. Like, stop complaining."
I mean, you
No,
could
but
also just pay that extra 10% of tax. Like
Yeah.
that's the trade off.
But yeah, I
Uh,
didn't even know people did that, and it's funny that you mention it now because I literally I watched like all of the Barstool stuff and I saw that he was doing that and I was like, that's so funny that like people have figured out little ways like that to like work the system.
mhm.
you have to.
Yeah. Well, kind of changing gears, wrapping up with one last question. Do you have a moment where because you're expanding your portfolio all the time and you're doing like a million different things, do you have a moment where it's like, I've made it? This is it. This is the goal that I had. I've made it and I'm done and I'm just going to like ride this out.
Yeah, so it's like kind of funny now. So I've started like working with other people's and really like trying hard to help them accomplish their goals. You see everybody online, and my social has grown enough where I get eyeballs. Like my Instagram in particular, like the last month or two, it just kind of went off. And people, oh, can I buy your course? Do you have a course? And I see people, selling their $6,000 courses or 10,000 who don't even have Airbnbs. Like I know, like they were someone, you talked about how you looked back at Two Turn Tony and saw that he was like authentically with the Ducks for like
Mm-hmm.
6, 7 years. I mean, I see people who, they were drop shipping gurus, in January, and they were stock trading gurus like a year ago, and then all of a sudden they just became Airbnb gurus and somehow just grew a 30 unit arbitrage portfolio, but actually provide no evidence to back that that's actually true, and are making hundreds of thousands of dollars a month from their courses, and posting their Maseratis, their Lamborghinis, these supposed houses that they may or may not own. Uh, like that's a huge ecosystem that kind of we're within, or that's came to light, that there's like the guru, quote unquote guru, world. So I'm kind of forget your question, but my point was like I'm actually trying, like I'm spending a lot of hours, like when I hop off this I have a call with one of my mentees, and I'm really working with them to help whatever their goals are. Like everyone has different goals. Like I'm really giving my all. Like yeah, I don't have to do anything. Like I literally am at the point where I could, I mean, I'm going to France next month. I could travel the entire year. Literally, like when my virtual assistants message me, like, and I got to deal with something, I can deal with it then for the houses. But like, I don't respond to like these common where are the restaurants? Like what time is check-in? Can we check in early? Ordering supplies. Like I don't do any of that anymore. I don't do the bookkeeping. I don't really have the day-to-day stuff I do. So I could just go F all, and just travel, enjoy life. I could do that, but that's just not me. And I don't think it'll ever be me. And so now, yeah, I'm literally devoting myself to, the calculator application. Like that is helping people. I do think 10, 20 years from now, that can be a really big thing, for me personally, but also like it becomes a big thing by helping more and more people. That's ultimately what leads it to being a bigger thing. And now I'm working with mentees, and I'm genuinely, like, I took 5 to begin with, and I'm like, I'm only taking 5. I'm going to try to actually help them. Not just like, here's my course, like F off. Like I'm not, you don't have my phone number or anything. Like they have my phone number. Like anything I can do, I am there. Anything, any resource I can provide. Like I'm really giving it my all, and so far have had a lot of success with the ones I've worked with, and now I'm taking more, and I'm going to cap it again once I take a certain number more, and really just try to make sure they're all successful and help them accomplish their goals. So yeah, now I'm getting into helping other people. Like I could theoretically go F off, but that's not me. So I don't know if there would be a point where I'm like, wow, I'm lying on the beach in Miami, or that's what I was doing in January. Like I could go to the beach and lie there all day if I wanted to.
Mm.
And I helped one of my childhood best friend. Like he's financially free through short term rentals now. I helped him. He's got he manages a few. He owns a duplex, and he's making, I don't know, almost $10,000 a month in cash flow. For him, that means surfing, lying on the beach, surfing, chilling, playing tennis. Like he's playing in tennis tournaments. He plays tennis for a couple hours a day. He surfs every morning. Like that's him, and he's my boy. Like I love him. Like I'm not going to say like you're wrong for doing that, but that's just not me. And that I don't think that'll ever be me. So no, I don't feel like I will ever have quote unquote made it. I'm a 25-year-old with 7 vacation houses. Like that post got me 3 million views and 60,000 followers, and it sounds like a good thing, but to me that doesn't really mean anything. It's like it's that it's not like I've made it because I'm this. No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That makes so much sense. I mean, I interviewed John Scholler on this podcast a few months ago, and he's the frugal investor on social media. I don't know if you're familiar, but that was his thing. Is I mean, he got into real estate because he was like, look, my wife got her doctorate. She got this big fancy job in Hawaii. We moved to Hawaii. She retired me, and she was going to work every day, and I was going to the beach every day. He's like, and literally after 2 weeks of going to the beach every day, he was like, I was never more depressed in my life
Mhm.
than in those 2 weeks. And he's like, in those 2 weeks, I was just like, no, like this isn't me. This isn't feasible for the way that I want to live my life. Like, I feel like I want a bigger impact. I want to help people. I want to do so on and so forth. And so, one, encouraging to hear. I think that's amazing. But two, it's like, I think there's a lot of people who think that, like, okay, when I reach a certain amount of money or when I reach a certain amount of houses or whatever, like, I'm just going to chill. That may work for some people, but for a lot of other people, that literally is like a mental health death
Yeah.
sentence.
When I'm doing nothing, I go crazy. Like
Yeah.
I can't do nothing. I have to like be actively stimulated, just doing
Yeah.
something a
I
lot
think
rather
the
than
next
every day.
thing is like when you're financially free, you get to choose the thing that you're passionate about that brings you
Yeah,
joy
exactly.
to do it. Like you get to do the fun thing. Even if you're not doing nothing, you're at least doing the fun thing. Like your quote unquote hobbies turn into your job. Where like I think that that's like the goal for some people, right? Like that's the made it moment where you're like I don't want to stop working. I love working, and honestly, I'm the same way. If I was doing nothing all day, I would literally go insane. But you're at a point where you get to choose the thing that makes you happy instead of having to work for that income. Like do
Absolutely.
whatever.
Right on. See, actually I have this call with my mentee in a minute. No.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, that was the last question. We
yeah.
went 7 minutes over anyway. So, well, thank you so much for joining us again on here. For those of you who are listening who do not follow Jeremy on socials or might want to use his calculator that he developed, where can they find you?
At Jeremy Werden, BNB Calc is the calculator, bnbcalc.com, and then at Jeremy Werden, Instagram, TikTok.
Beautiful. Well, I will link everything below so you guys can find everything really easily. Thank you guys, as always, for listening. Thank you, Jeremy, for taking the time to come
Thank
on.
you for having
And
me.
we will catch you guys next time. Bye.
Bye.
Ciao.